This is not a motivational talk, and this is not something you listen to and forget. What you are about to hear is an activation. In the next few minutes, nothing outside of you will change, yet everything within you will. Because the moment your mind shifts, the world has no choice but to follow. You are not here to learn something new. You are here to remember something you have always known but never consciously used. Stay with me, because what happens next depends entirely on your awareness. Right now, your life is a reflection of assumptions you have been living from, most of them unconsciously. Every result, every delay, every breakthrough has come from a state of mind you once accepted as true. And the moment you accept a new truth about yourself, reality must reorganize to match it. This is not about effort, struggle, or waiting for signs. This is about entering a state where the mind no longer questions but knows. As you listen, do not analyze these words. Let them land, let them settle. Because the mind does not manifest through force, it manifests through feeling. When the inner conversation changes, the outer world responds automatically. You don't need to figure out how it will happen. The moment you decide who you are being, the path reveals itself without effort. In the next few minutes, you will be guided into a state where desire dissolves into fulfillment, where wanting ends and having begins, where the mind stops chasing outcomes and starts commanding reality from within. This is the moment you stop observing your life and start directing it. Stay present, stay open, because the shift you've been waiting for begins now. The activation of awareness is the true beginning of manifestation, because nothing in your life shifts until you recognize where power actually resides. Most people live believing the world acts upon them, that circumstances dictate emotions, and that results come from effort, time, or luck. This belief alone keeps the mind dormant. The moment awareness activates, you see the truth. Nothing outside you creates, everything responds. Your awareness is not passive, it is creative. Whatever you consistently accept as true about yourself, life faithfully expresses. This activation is not dramatic, loud, or emotional. It is a quiet realization that lands with certainty. I am not reacting to life. Life is reacting to me. From that moment onward, the old struggle collapses. You stop chasing outcomes, trying to control people, or waiting for permission. You understand that the outer world is a mirror, delayed but obedient, reflecting the state of consciousness you occupy now. Awareness activates when you notice that your inner conversations, assumptions, and self-concept have been shaping your experiences all along. This realization removes blame, guilt, and fear, because you are no longer a victim of circumstances. You are the source that gives them meaning and direction. When awareness awakens, you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin asking, "What state am I living from?" That question alone shifts everything. The activated mind no longer seeks techniques, as if manifestation were something external to be achieved. It understands that manifestation is automatic, continuous, and effortless once awareness is aligned. The mind does not need to be trained, it needs to be directed. Awareness is that direction. The moment you become conscious of your assumptions, you gain the ability to choose them deliberately. And the moment you choose deliberately, reality begins to reorganize without resistance. This is why manifestation can be instant, because the delay never comes from the world, it comes from wavering awareness. When awareness is scattered, results appear slow and inconsistent. When awareness is focused and settled, manifestation accelerates naturally. The activation of awareness also dissolves the illusion of separation. You stop seeing yourself as separate from your desire. Desire is no longer something you pursue. It is something that reveals what state is available to occupy. When awareness activates, desire becomes a doorway, not a lack. You realize you don't want something because you don't have it. You want it because the state already exists within consciousness and is inviting you to enter it. This is a profound shift. Instead of longing, you begin accepting. Instead of hoping, you begin assuming. An assumption is the language reality understands. Awareness teaches you that emotions do not come from events. Events come from emotional states held internally. When you feel powerless, life reflects limitation. When you feel certain, life rearranges to confirm that certainty. The activated awareness no longer fights negative thoughts aggressively. It simply refuses to dwell in states that do not serve. You observe thoughts without identifying with them. You choose the state deliberately and return to it gently but persistently. This is mastery, not control through force, but authority through understanding. Awareness also reveals that time is not the enemy. Time is neutral. What stretches time is indecision, doubt, and contradiction within the self. When awareness is clear and unified, time collapses. Things that once took years begin happening quickly, sometimes suddenly, because the mind has stopped sending mixed signals. The activated mind understands that consistency of awareness is more powerful than intensity of emotion. You don't need to feel excited all the time. You need to feel settled in truth. Calm certainty moves faster than emotional highs. As awareness deepens, you stop looking for signs because you realize signs follow, they do not precede. You no longer ask, is it working? Because awareness itself is the work. The moment you know something is done internally, the outer confirmation becomes inevitable, not something to be questioned. Awareness also frees you from comparison. When you are aware of your creative power, another person's success no longer threatens you, it confirms the law at work. You stop envying and start understanding. This understanding strengthens your faith, not in hope, but in principle. The activated awareness does not beg, plead, or force affirmations. It claims quietly, it assumes naturally, it rests confidently. You begin to live as someone who expects alignment, ease, and fulfillment, not because of blind positivity, but because awareness has shown you how reality functions. Even challenges lose their emotional charge. They are no longer obstacles, but indicators, showing where awareness has drifted. And instead of reacting, you adjust internally. That adjustment alone changes outcomes. This is why awareness is the true activation, not visualization, not repetition, not effort. Those are tools, but awareness is the foundation. Without it, techniques feel exhausting. With it, even a single assumption reshapes experience. As awareness stabilizes, your inner dialogue changes naturally. You stop speaking from fear and start speaking from identity. Your thoughts align with the version of you who already lives the result. And because reality must echo identity, manifestation follows without struggle. The activation of awareness is also the end of waiting. You stop postponing happiness, confidence, or peace until something happens. You embody them now, knowing that embodiment is what causes events, not the reward that comes after them. This reverses the entire pattern most people live by. Awareness teaches you that fulfillment is not a destination, it is a state you enter. Once entered, the world follows. And from this place, manifestation is no longer something you do occasionally, it becomes the natural way you live. You move through life knowing that every moment is responding to you, that every assumption is creative, and that nothing is wasted. This knowing settles deep into the mind, and once it does, you cannot unsee it. You walk differently. You think differently. You expect differently. And life, having no choice, begins to reflect this activated awareness back to you in ways that feel almost effortless, natural, and precise. Entering the state where it is already done is the point at which manifestation stops being a process and becomes a decision. Most people believe manifestation requires time because they remain mentally positioned in wanting, hoping, or trying. These states, no matter how positive they feel, imply absence. The mind faithfully reflects what it assumes to be true, and if the assumption is, I am trying to get, reality echoes delay. Instant manifestation begins the moment you withdraw attention from desire as a future event and instead occupy fulfillment as a present fact. This is not pretending or forcing belief. It is choosing the state that already exists in consciousness. Every possible outcome already exists as a state, and your experience depends entirely on which one you enter and remain in. When you enter the state of is done, the mind stops sending contradictory messages to reality. There is no longer internal negotiation. There is calm certainty. That certainty is not loud or emotional. It is settled, grounded, and unquestioned. The moment the mind accepts completion, the subconscious takes it as instruction and begins arranging circumstances to reflect it. This is why people often experience sudden shifts after they finally let go. Letting go does not mean giving up the desire. It means releasing the state of not having it. When you let go of effort, the state of completion becomes natural. Entering the done state requires you to feel the emotional reality of the fulfilled desire, not the excitement of anticipation. Excitement belongs to the future. Fulfillment belongs to now. When something is truly yours, you are not emotionally charged about it, you are at peace with it. That peace is the signal of completion. The mind does not respond to words alone. It responds to inner atmosphere. When the atmosphere of fulfillment is present, manifestation moves automatically. This is why repeating affirmations without shifting state often produces little result. Words spoken from lack reinforce lack. The same words spoken from completion reinforce truth. The state determines the outcome, not the technique. Entering the state of already done also requires surrendering the need to control how it will happen. Control is rooted in fear that it might not happen. When you know something is done, you do not interfere. You allow. You trust the unfolding without micromanaging it. This trust is not blind faith. It is confidence born from understanding the law of assumption. Once assumed, the end must express. The mind that remains in the done state does not check reality for confirmation. Checking implies doubt. Instead, it lives normally, calmly, confidently, carrying an inner knowing that does not depend on evidence. Evidence always follows assumption, never the other way around. Entering the done state also changes your inner dialogue. You no longer speak to yourself as someone waiting for change. You speak as someone living from it. Thoughts become statements rather than questions. Your inner world reflects stability rather than urgency. This stability is powerful because it removes resistance. Resistance is not negative emotion, resistance is contradiction. When you desire something and simultaneously question it, you create friction. When you enter the done state, contradiction disappears. The mind is unified. That unity accelerates results. The done state is not something you hold with tension. It is something you return to gently whenever awareness drifts. If doubt arises, you do not fight it. You simply re-enter the state. Persistence does not mean struggle. It means consistency of identity. You persist by repeatedly choosing the state of fulfillment over the state of longing. Each time you do, you strengthen the assumption, and assumptions harden into facts. Time does not delay manifestation. Inconsistent occupancy of the state does. The moment occupancy becomes stable, manifestation becomes inevitable. Entering the done state also reveals that imagination is not fantasy, it is rehearsal. The mind cannot distinguish between an experience vividly imagined and one physically lived when emotion is involved. When you imagine from the end, feeling the naturalness of completion, the subconscious accepts it as reality. From that acceptance, the body, behavior, and environment begin adjusting without conscious effort. You may find yourself acting differently, speaking differently, or making decisions that align with the fulfilled state without planning to do so. This is the law in motion. The done state also removes desperation. Desperation comes from believing that something outside you holds power over your happiness. When you enter the state of fulfillment, happiness is internal, not conditional. This internal satisfaction is what paradoxically brings external fulfillment faster. The less you chase, the more aligned you become. The mind that knows something is done does not rush. It moves with ease, and ease is magnetic. Entering the done state does not mean ignoring present circumstances. It means refusing to let them define your identity. Circumstances are the echo of past assumptions. They cannot override present awareness unless you allow them to. When you remain faithful to the done state despite temporary contradictions, you demonstrate mastery. Reality must catch up. The done state also teaches patience without waiting. You are patient because you are not lacking. You are not waiting because you are already fulfilled. This is a subtle but powerful distinction. From this state, even delays lose emotional weight. You remain steady, knowing that the rearrangement is unfolding. Entering the done state ultimately transforms manifestation from an occasional practice into a way of being. You stop turning it on and off. You live from the end as your natural orientation. You expect alignment, you expect movement, you expect results. An expectation is assumption made visible. When the state of already done becomes familiar, manifestation feels effortless, normal, and even predictable. Not because life becomes boring, but because you understand its mechanics. You are no longer surprised by success, you anticipate it quietly. And that quiet anticipation, rooted in fulfillment rather than hope, is the secret of instant manifestation. Identity is the silent command that reality obeys. Long before action takes place, long before effort is applied, and long before results appear, identity has already spoken. Most people believe their actions create their life, so they work harder, try new methods, and constantly search for the next strategy. But action taken from the wrong identity only repeats the same patterns in different forms. The truth is that action is an effect, not a cause. It flows automatically from the state of being you occupy. When identity shifts, behavior follows naturally, without force or discipline. This is why some people seem to manifest effortlessly, while others struggle despite constant effort. They are not doing more, they are being different. Identity determines what feels natural to you, what you expect, what you tolerate, and what you allow. And whatever feels natural becomes your reality. Manifestation accelerates the moment you stop trying to change your life and instead change the concept of self from which your life flows. The mind does not manifest desires, it manifests self-image. Whatever you accept as true about who you are becomes the blueprint for your experiences. If you identify as someone who waits, life gives you reasons to wait. If you identify as someone who expects, life delivers confirmations. This shift from action to identity is the turning point, where manifestation becomes instant rather than gradual. Identity operates beneath conscious thought. It shapes your inner dialogue, emotional reactions, and decisions without asking for permission. This is why affirmations spoken from a conflicting identity feel empty. Saying I am successful, while identifying as someone who struggles, creates internal resistance. But when identity changes first, affirmations become confirmations rather than attempts. The power is not in the words, it is in the state from which they arise. Identity is built through assumption. Every time you assume something about yourself, positive or negative, you reinforce a version of you. Over time, these assumptions harden into personality, and personality becomes destiny. The moment you deliberately assume a new identity, destiny begins to shift. You do not need evidence to assume. Assumption creates evidence. Identity is not something you earn, it is something you claim. And once claimed internally, it must be expressed externally. The mind cannot maintain two conflicting identities for long. One will dominate and push the other out. This is why wavering produces slow results. When you switch back and forth between identities, confident one moment, doubtful the next, reality mirrors inconsistency. When you settle into one identity and remain there, reality stabilizes and responds quickly. Identity also determines your emotional baseline. You do not wake up and choose emotions randomly. They arise from who you believe you are. Someone who identifies as secure feels calm even before results appear. Someone who identifies as lacking feels anxious even when things go well. This emotional baseline is constantly broadcast to reality. Manifestation responds to the signal, not the intention. Changing identity changes the signal. And when the signal changes, the reflection must follow. Identity over action also explains why forcing discipline often fails. You cannot sustain actions that contradict your self-concept. You may push yourself temporarily, but eventually the mind returns to what feels familiar. This is not weakness, it is coherence. The mind seeks consistency between identity and behavior. When identity aligns with the desired outcome, discipline becomes unnecessary. Action flows effortlessly because it feels like self-expression rather than self-improvement. This is the point where manifestation feels natural rather than exhausting. Identity also governs your relationship with time. When you identify as someone becoming, time feels slow and heavy. When you identify as someone who already is, time feels light and cooperative. The identity of becoming always lives in the future. The identity of being lives now, and reality only responds to the now. This is why instant manifestation requires identity shift, not gradual improvement. You do not become the person after the manifestation, you become the person first, and the manifestation follows as confirmation. Identity also shapes what you notice. Awareness follows identity. When you shift who you are being, you begin to notice opportunities, ideas, and paths that were always present but previously invisible. This is not coincidence, it is alignment. The world did not change, you did. And because perception changed, experience changed. Identity also influences how others treat you. People respond not to your words but to your state. They sense confidence, certainty, and expectation unconsciously. When your identity shifts, relationships shift without explanation. You are not trying to control anyone, you are simply occupying a state that invites a different response. This is manifestation through being, not manipulation. Identity over action also removes pressure. You stop measuring progress obsessively because identity does not need validation. You do not constantly check for results because you are no longer trying to become, you are expressing. This inner stability speeds manifestation because it removes doubt. Doubt is not thinking negatively, doubt is questioning identity. When identity is settled, doubt loses power. You may still experience thoughts, but they do not define you. You return to identity as your anchor. Persistence becomes natural because you are not forcing belief, you are maintaining self-recognition. Over time, this recognition deepens and solidifies. The outer world has no option but to reorganize around it. Identity also teaches you that you do not manifest what you want, but what you believe you are worthy of receiving. Worthiness is an identity issue, not a moral one. When you identify as deserving, receiving feels normal. When you identify as unworthy, receiving feels uncomfortable or short-lived. Shifting identity dissolves these limitations automatically. You stop self-sabotaging without needing to analyze the past. The past loses relevance because identity lives in the present. Ultimately, choosing identity over action is choosing mastery over struggle. You stop chasing change and start embodying it. You stop fixing and start expressing. You stop becoming and start being. And in that being, manifestation is no longer delayed, resisted, or inconsistent. It is immediate, natural, and inevitable. Stillness, siratis amamadiati poa. Txlnc tatmodare. Mental stillness is the most misunderstood yet most powerful state of manifestation, because the mind has been conditioned to believe that effort, repetition, and constant thinking create results. In truth, constant mental noise is what delays them. Power is not born from force, it is born from certainty. And certainty arises naturally when the mind becomes still. Mental stillness does not mean emptiness, passivity, or lack of desire. It means the absence of inner argument. It is the state where the mind is no longer negotiating with itself, no longer questioning, no longer chasing confirmation. When the mind becomes still, it becomes authoritative. It stops asking reality for permission and starts assuming outcomes as facts. This is why stillness creates immediate power. A noisy mind sends mixed signals. One moment it believes, the next it doubts. One moment it imagines success. The next it worries about failure. Reality, being obedient, reflects the inconsistency as delay. Mental stillness removes contradiction. When the inner conversation quiets, the assumption becomes singular, clean, and uninterrupted. That singular assumption impresses the subconscious deeply, and what is impressed must be expressed. Stillness is not achieved by fighting thoughts. Fighting creates more noise. Stillness comes from understanding. When you understand that your role is not to force manifestation but to occupy a state, effort naturally dissolves. The mind relaxes into knowing. That relaxation is not laziness, it is confidence. A confident mind does not repeat itself endlessly. It states once and rests. This resting is the stillness that carries power. The moment you stop trying to convince yourself, the mind accepts the assumption as truth. Convincing is effort. Acceptance is stillness. The subconscious responds instantly to acceptance. This is why manifestation often happens when people stop trying, stop affirming, stop visualizing obsessively, and simply feel settled. They mistake this for luck or coincidence, but it is law. The still mind is receptive, and receptivity is creative. Mental stillness also shifts your emotional baseline. Instead of emotional highs and lows, you enter emotional neutrality with certainty beneath it. This neutrality is powerful because it is stable. Stability impresses the subconscious more deeply than emotional spikes. Excitement fades, but calm knowing persists. And persistence of state is what solidifies manifestation. A still mind does not look for signs. Looking for signs implies doubt. It implies the outcome is not yet secure. The still mind already knows. Knowing removes the urge to check. And when checking stops, resistance dissolves. Reality responds faster to a mind that is not watching the clock. Mental stillness also allows imagination to work correctly. Imagination is not meant to be forced repeatedly. One clear impression, accepted in stillness, is more powerful than 1,000 frantic visualizations. When the mind is quiet, imagination sinks deeper. It is received rather than rehearsed. This depth is what creates immediacy. A shallow impression fades quickly. A deep impression reorganizes behavior, perception, and circumstance automatically. Stillness also restores authority over inner dialogue. Instead of being dragged by thoughts, you observe them. Observation creates space. In that space, you choose deliberately. You return to the assumption gently without emotional charge. This gentle return is powerful because it reinforces identity rather than fear. Fear is noisy. Confidence is quiet. The mind that is truly confident does not argue with itself. It does not rehearse explanations. It does not justify its belief. It rests. That rest is felt by the subconscious as finality. And finality produces results. Mental stillness also disconnects you from past conditioning. Much of mental noise comes from old memories, learned limitations, and repeated emotional reactions. When the mind becomes still, these patterns lose energy. You are no longer feeding them with attention. What is not fed dissolves. Stillness clears the mental field, allowing a new assumption to take root without competition. This is why stillness often feels like relief. It is the relief of no longer carrying mental weight. And relief is a powerful emotional signal. It tells the subconscious that something is resolved. Resolution precedes manifestation. Mental stillness also aligns the body. When the mind stops resisting, the body relaxes. Breathing deepens. Tension releases. This physical relaxation reinforces the assumption of safety and completion. The body becomes a participant in manifestation rather than a site of stress. Reality responds not just to thought, but to the combined signal of mind and body. Stillness harmonizes both. The still mind also changes how you respond to circumstances. You no longer react impulsively. Reaction is rooted in fear and uncertainty. Response is rooted in awareness. When you respond instead of react, you maintain your state regardless of appearances. This consistency accelerates manifestation because you are no longer pulled out of the assumption by temporary contradictions. Stillness gives you emotional immunity. Circumstances lose the power to destabilize you. And what cannot destabilize you cannot delay you. Mental stillness also removes the pressure to do it right. Many people exhaust themselves trying to manifest perfectly, saying the right words, visualizing at the right time, feeling the right emotion. This perfectionism creates tension. Stillness dissolves it. You realize that the law does not require precision, it requires acceptance. Once accepted, the process unfolds naturally. Stillness also clarifies intuition. When mental noise quiets, intuitive impulses become clear. You take inspired action without overthinking. These actions feel obvious, not forced. They appear at the right time, in the right way. This is not effort, it is alignment. Mental stillness is also the gateway to living from the end. When the mind is quiet, it is easier to feel fulfillment as normal. Fulfillment is subtle. It does not shout, it whispers. Only a still mind can hear it. When fulfillment becomes familiar, the mind stops reaching. And when reaching stops, receiving begins. Mental stillness ultimately teaches you that manifestation is not something you push into existence. It is something you allow by removing interference. The world is constantly responding. The only question is whether the signal you are sending is clear or distorted. Noise distorts. Stillness clarifies. And clarity is power. When you cultivate mental stillness, not as a technique, but as a way of being, manifestation becomes immediate because there's nothing contradicting it. The assumption stands alone, undisturbed. Reality, having no resistance to mirror, must comply. Living from the end is the final and most decisive shift in conscious creation, because it is where all inner work stops being preparation and becomes embodiment. Most people live toward their desires, measuring distance, tracking progress, and emotionally reacting to circumstances as proof of where they stand. Living from the end reverses this pattern completely. You no longer move toward a future outcome. You move from an inner conclusion that has already been reached. This is not imagination used as escape, nor is it denial of present reality. It is the deliberate choice to let the inner state of fulfillment become your point of origin. The end is not a moment in time, it is a state of consciousness. When you live from it, time becomes irrelevant because internally the result is already secured. Reality has no choice but to rearrange around this internal fact. Living from the end means that your thoughts no longer ask if or when. They speak from certainty. Your emotions no longer swing between hope and disappointment. They settle into quiet confidence. This confidence is not arrogance, it is naturalness. When something truly belongs to you, it does not excite you constantly, it feels normal. Normality is the strongest signal you can send to the subconscious. The mind accepts what feels normal as true, and what it accepts as true must appear in form. This is why living from the end collapses time. You stop feeding the state of waiting. Waiting is a state. Expectation is a state. Fulfillment is a state. The one you occupy determines the experience you receive. Living from the end also changes how you interpret circumstances. Events that once felt discouraging lose their power. You stop reading meaning into temporary delays because you already know the ending. Just as someone watching a movie for the second time is not emotionally disturbed by suspenseful scenes, someone living from the end is not shaken by appearances. The ending is known. This knowing stabilizes awareness and prevents emotional reactions from pulling you out of the fulfilled state. Stability is what makes manifestation inevitable. Living from the end also refines your inner dialogue. Instead of rehearsing problems, you mentally converse from solutions. Instead of imagining explanations, you imagine confirmations. These inner conversations are subtle, often unnoticed, yet they shape experience more powerfully than conscious visualization. When your inner dialogue reflects completion, the subconscious receives consistent reinforcement. Consistency is what turns assumption into fact. Living from the end also eliminates the need for constant techniques. Techniques are useful to enter the state, but once the state is entered, they naturally fall away. You do not keep knocking on a door once you are inside the room. Continuing techniques from a fulfilled state would imply doubt. Living from the end means trusting the state enough to stop proving it. This trust is not blind, it is grounded in awareness of how reality responds. Living from the end also transforms behavior without effort. You find yourself making choices aligned with the fulfilled version of you, not because you are trying to act as if, but because it feels natural. Acting as if is conscious effort. Living from the end is unconscious congruence. Congruence is powerful because it removes inner friction. When thought, emotion, and behavior align, reality moves quickly. There is no resistance to overcome. Living from the end also reshapes your sense of self-worth. Worthiness becomes assumed rather than negotiated. You no longer question whether you deserve the outcome. You live as someone for whom it is normal. This dissolves self-sabotage at the root. The mind does not sabotage what aligns with identity. Identity is the guardian of experience. Living from the end also changes how you relate to others. You stop seeking validation because fulfillment is internal. You stop reacting emotionally because your state is not dependent on external approval. People sense this shift and respond differently. Opportunities, respect, and cooperation appear naturally, not because you demand them, but because your state invites them. Living from the end also alters your relationship with effort. You still take action, but action no longer feels heavy or urgent. It feels timely and obvious. You act because it aligns, not because you are chasing a result. This reduces burnout and increases effectiveness. Living from the end also teaches patience without passivity. You are patient because you are not lacking. You are active because you are engaged with life. There is no contradiction between patience and movement when the end is assumed. Movement becomes expression, not pursuit. Living from the end also brings emotional maturity. You stop dramatizing setbacks and stop celebrating small wins. Both come from uncertainty. Certainty brings balance. Balance keeps you in the state. And staying in the state is what produces results. Living from the end also makes manifestation predictable rather than mysterious. You begin to notice patterns. You see how quickly reality responds when your inner state is stable. This understanding strengthens faith, not faith in possibility, but faith in principle. You no longer hope manifestation works, you know how it works. Living from the end ultimately frees you from the cycle of desire and disappointment. Desire no longer means lack, it means availability. You recognize desires as invitations to enter new states, not as reminders of what is missing. Once you enter the state, the desire dissolves, replaced by fulfillment. That fulfillment becomes your new normal, and from that normal, life expands again. Living from the end is not the end of growth, it is the end of struggle. Growth continues, but it is creative rather than compensatory. You expand because you choose to, not because you feel incomplete. And from this place, manifestation is not something you activate occasionally. It is the natural consequence of who you are being. When you live from the end, the question is no longer, will it happen? The only question left is, how quickly will reality catch up? And it always does.